duck out to watch the Rangers win the World Series. Last I saw of the Rangers, they were getting their asses whooped by the D-bags. I saw it on their jerseys. It says right on the front, D-bags. I don't know who would put such a thing on their baseball uniforms. Christine Genelia, podcast player. Ladies and gentlemen, it is go time. Let us bump out to the main. Hello, everyone. I would like, first of all of you to take a moment and be gracious. Be gracious that an actor of my caliber has decided to slum a little bit and hang out with all of you, the little people. I will regale you this evening with my acting debut, or at least a sample of it, because this is a capitalist society. Although all of my acting rails against the outrage of capitalism and is acting for the people, we still have to sell some things so that I may have a platform in which I might rail against the things that we are selling. You know, I promised everyone I would not let Hollywood go to my head, and I have not let Hollywood go to my big bald head. Now I believe it is time for us, almost time to begin the reading of this evening. I believe I was so busy coming up with my performance attire that I forgot to do a previously on, so we'll have to wing that later, Steve, and I will do whatever I can. Yes, Matt McRoberts, I am a human chameleon. You may not know this, but underneath this hat, you think I have a huge glowing mane of hair. I do not. I'm as bald as the day I was born. In fact, possibly even balder. We do have 10 people on YouTube, Christine, so your technical difficulties continue to be a problematic situation in the general expanse that is the human experience. Because that is what we actors do. We gather and concise and condense and deliver the human experience. There's your dramatic pause, Vaughn. All right, ladies and gentlemen. Hey, guy. Don't call me guy, buddy. You guys may not realize this. Wait a minute. It's me, Scott. You guys thought it was totally somebody else, because that is the caliber of talent I bring to the table. But it was me. I fooled you. It was me all along, because I was acting. So let's get into it. But I do have champagne, and champagne is only for fancy people. So those of you at home who have champagne, please join me in your fanciness. Oh, special effect. Champagne cam. There we go. All right. Kim, I understand you did think you were in the wrong place. It's an easy mistake to make. It's like me and Russell Crowe can just completely become a different person. We can change our face. Watch. This is me happy, and this is me angry. See the difference? It's staggering. Here we go. Now we got good audio going. Thank you, Beth. Thank you. I just want people to be factual in their analysis of my greatness. I'm not looking for praise, or I'm not looking for compliments. I'm not looking for you to shine me up at all. I swear I'm just looking for observational accuracy. Let's read a story. Actually, I got to get going. This is a long-ass story. So, I'm going to do the story so far. I'm going to wing it. I got totally carried away getting ready for this. Sorry, you guys. So that's George. I got to look at Bernie. That's Bernie. Toivo. Jocko was a little higher. And Arnold. Okay, here we go. Snaps. I believe actors do snaps. Or beat poets. One of the two. I'm not sure. Here we go. Steve, I am hitting record. Enjoy the story, you guys. Here we go. Previously, on the 6th day of deer camp, George and his childhood friends were in a hunting cabin, as they have done every year for 30 years, when an alien invasion took place and tore the skies apart as a ship crashed near their isolated cabin way up north in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. To survive the cold after their cabin was blown up, they had no choice but to go to that crashed ship and try and find shelter against a horrible blizzard. Once inside the ship, they found many dead alien bodies torn to pieces by the impact of the crash, and they also found a room full of aliens who had survived, but those aliens were mere children. And now, the 7th day of deer camp. Have you been harmed in any way? They asked it every time during the thrice daily video conferences. George had a dozen different ways to answer that question. Had they physically hurt him? No, they had not. Had they emotionally hurt him? Yes. A year gone by without seeing his boys in person, without touching his wife, without satisfying the simple yet overpowering need of spending time with his family. But that was the trade-off. Those in control wanted him gone, and preventing his family from seeing him was one of the many tools they used to try and get their way. If George really wanted to see his wife and sons, all he had to do was leave. No, George said. They haven't hurt me. And are the children still alive? Are they unharmed? The children. That phrase meant a lot of things to a lot of people, but since that first moment George had stood in front of a news camera, it had taken on one specific definition. The children are fine, he said, unharmed so far. George wished he could drop that so far bit, but he could not. The world was watching him. As far as he knew, he was the only thing standing between the children and knives, microscopes, autopsy tables, and secret facilities owned and operated by the United States government. Good, the mask said. This one sounded French, or maybe French-Canadian. George wasn't sure. The voice changed every day, but the mask was always the same. Guy Fawkes. The symbol of the anonymous movement, a movement that had grown to 100 times its original size following the alien attack that had shattered cities and killed millions. A movement that had grown because of the children, because of a rampant distrust of governments, of militaries and the police, because of the world's need to know something positive could come out of that tragedy. 3 times a day, George reported in. If he missed an appointment, shit hit the fan. Hackers from America, China, Russia, and more would go to work, sabotaging targets that had been pre-selected and pre-qualified. There was no mistaking the correlation between George not appearing for an update and the instant retaliation against multiple targets from multiple sources. And if there were no online targets, pre-programmed physical demonstrations happened within minutes. Flash mobs that blocked the entrance to the Lincoln Tunnel. 1,000 people climbing the White House fence for a calm stroll across the lawn. Bomb threats at airports. Instant sit-ins at police stations with hundreds of individuals willing to be arrested, willing to go to jail, willing to take a nightstick to the head in order to send a message. That message? George was not to be touched, not to be harmed, not to be delayed from talking to the world for any reason. Good, the mask said. Is there anything else you need to tell us? George shook his head. Nothing else. There's no reason I shouldn't be back online for the next update in 4 hours. Very well. Keep up the good work. We are watching. That last bit wasn't meant for him. It was meant for his hosts. Or maybe captors was a better word for them. The screen went blank. A strong hand on the back of his arm. Mr. Pelton, we will now escort you back to your quarters. George nodded absently. He stood. Thank you, he said. Because he was a Midwestern boy, and being polite was so ingrained in him, he said such things automatically, even to a soldier who would put a bullet in his head, if so ordered. There was absolutely no choice in the matter. He wondered, as he always did after the check-ins, how many more days he could spend here. He wondered if he had made the right choice. If he should have just gone home to his family when it... He wondered if he had made the right choice. If he should have just gone home to his family when it was over instead of saving those kids. Instead, he had made a phone call. A simple call that had changed the course of human history. In the wilds of Michigan's Upper Peninsula, George's cell phone reception had always been shitty. One bar, if any at all, courtesy of AT&T's weak network. But on that day at the end of the world, sealed into a room on a crashed starship with little aliens standing around him, little aliens, for God's sakes, George got 2 bars. He had to do something. He had to find help. But who could he call? The invasion had come without warning. At least, no warning George and his childhood friends knew of. Ships from freaking outer space attacking major cities worldwide. One of those ships must have got sidetracked or malfunctioned or something because it had crashed in the deep woods close to the tip of Michigan's Keweenaw Peninsula. The hunting cabin where George and his friends had spent 2 weeks every November for the last 30 years had been close to the crash site, so close that a war machine or mech or whatever you call an alien piloting it, or whatever you called an alien piloting a suit of powered armor, had attacked the cabin, blown it to pieces. Luckily, George, Tyvo, Jocko, Bernie, and Arnold had already been outside when that happened. They returned fire against the attacker, killing the alien inside the machine. From there, a hike through the deep snow and the frigid woods, following colored lights to the crashed ship. An actual flying saucer. Or at least it used to be one before a high-speed impact and a tumble through the woods turned it into a dented, cracked, smashed thing that had more in common with a T-bone... Sorry, guys, go back and do that one again. Damn it. An actual flying saucer. Or at least it used to be one before a high-speed impact and a tumble through the woods turned it into a dented, cracked, smashed thing that had more in common with a T-bone totaled station wagon than an interstellar vessel. Inside that ship, bodies. Non-human bodies. Pieces and parts all over. Living beings torn to shreds by a crash that gouged a 50-foot wide trench through the snow-covered ground, pines, and the birch trees. So many bodies, so many dead. But not all dead, as George found out when he opened a sealed door. Inside, a room clearly designed to withstand such crashes. The evidence for that being a dozen alien children alive and well. It started out as a dozen, but that number dropped to 11 when George's friend Toivo shot one in the head. Toivo wanted to kill the rest of them, as did Bernie and Jacko, but George put himself between the children and the barrel of Toivo's hunting rifle. George still wasn't sure why he had protected the alien kids. Maybe it was the fact that they were helpless. Maybe somewhere in his head, he knew this was a history-changing event, and the sane thing to do was preserve these 11 alien lives, even though the aliens' kin had probably killed millions of people. Or maybe it was the crash seats. He stood in a room with the 11 alien children. The same room with the crash seats, or chambers, or whatever the hell they were, that had kept those children alive during the crash. The grown-up aliens had seen to the kids first, safely strapping them in, just as George would have done for his own children. His friends were somewhere else in the ship. He knew Bernie was probably tending to Mr. Ekela, keeping the old man warm as winter slowly and surely stole the heat from the ripped hull. George didn't know what Jacko was doing. Rooting through the ship probably, because it was an alien ship, and would Jacko ever get a chance like this again? The one that worried George, though, was Toivo. Toivo, who had already killed one of the alien children in cold blood. Toivo, who clearly wanted to kill the rest of them as well. Toivo, who had never left northern Michigan, who still spoke with a Yooper accent George had shed years ago. Duh instead of the. ending every other sentence with a rhetorical, eh? If George hadn't moved away, would he still have that accent? Would he have wanted to shoot the children? So hard to know if his urge to save them was something he was born with or something cultivated from living somewhere other than this remote, homogeneous culture. A silly time to worry about nature versus nurture. The phone buzzed in George's hand. 1 bar. It had reconnected to the network. He could dial 911, but would anyone answer? Had the attacks hit Milwaukee, Detroit? And if he did get through, what would he say? I've got an actual ship here with survivors. Who would respond to that? Who would be dispatched? George looked at the 11 alien children. Paralyzed with indecision, he imagined how things might play out. If he called 911, the local police station, or any government office, and he got through, word would quickly spread out the ladder. George knew where that ladder ended. The army. The military would come. These children would be taken away, hidden, studied, interrogated. What if someone did that to his children? George looked at the phone. A sense of panic crept over him, lodged in his chest, burrowed into his heart. What if he did the wrong thing? A call could get the children killed. Not calling meant they might die, because what the hell did he know about goddamn alien children? What did they eat? What needs did they have? He was a fucking insurance salesman, for Christ's sake. Then the phone's single bar blinked out. 0 bars. No connection. George started to shake. He had missed his chance. How long until the cold pushed its way inside the shattered ship, started to freeze the very children he wanted to protect? Not just them. His friends would freeze as well, the boys he had grown up with. And the one man who had helped them all understood what it meant to actually be a man, Mr. Ekla. Arnold Ekla was hurt. He needed help. 1 bar reappeared. Maybe a chance to make only a single call before that bar blinked off again. George's thumbs worked the smartphone, bringing up a web browser. He had to get a number and get it fast. 1 call. Maybe he could save Mr. Ekla and the children both with 1 call. The guard escorted George to his room. George had maybe 10 minutes to himself tops, then he had to get back to the ship and check on the children. He always had to check on the children. The goddamn children. They had become his entire life, at the expense of the life that had been his before all of this started. Yes, a year ago, he had been a simple insurance salesman. Now, the face that looked at him from the mirror every day happened to be the most recognized face on the planet. What was it now? 4 billion YouTube? What was it now? 4 billion YouTube views and counting? The interview had been downloaded and re-uploaded so many times, no one really knew for sure just how many total views there were. 1 million views the very first day, he was told. Within 2 weeks, the interview had passed by that Korean guy with the funny glasses and that one pop singer girl who wore crazy outfits to become the most viewed video in the history of mankind. The guard stopped at the door to George's small room. Seemed like a nice enough kid, but he didn't say much. None of the guards did. They were ordered not to, probably. Loneliness, lack of communication with other people, just more tools for the government to use to isolate the... Damn it. Loneliness, lack of communication with other people, Just more tools for the government to isolate the thorn in its side. George entered. The guard stayed at the door. 12 feet by 12 feet. A twin bed. A small desk with a computer that let him send and receive screened email. Email and nothing else. The irony was hard to process. The internet's most popular person was not allowed to use the internet. He checked his mail. Like clockwork, the daily missive from his wife, Mary. This one started out the way that all of her emails started. First line, 2 words. Come home. Then a picture of the boys. Dressed in spandex singlets this time, youth wrestling must be starting up. God, but they were so beautiful. Michael and Luke had grown so much. When George had left for his 2-week hunting trip, Michael had been 6, Luke 8. Now they were 7 and 9. George had missed an entire year of their life. A year and counting that he would never get back. Luke had stopped smiling for pictures. George wasn't sure when. A year ago, the boy had been all giggles and squeals. Now every shot of him showed a scowl, a frown. Was that normal for a growing boy, or was it because his father was gone? Mary said it was a phase, but George knew the meaning behind her words. The phase wouldn't have happened if George had been around. After come home in the picture, the usual update. The boys' grades were slipping. Luke had gotten into a fight at school. Both of them were being more and more disrespectful at home. How much of that was boys growing up, and how much of it was Mary, unintentionally easing up on the reins, letting the boys run wild because it would carve at George, make him want to give up this fool's quest and come home. He hoped he was wrong about that, but he had been with Mary for most of his adult life. Deep down inside, in the places he tried to ignore, he knew of his wife's expertise at subtle manipulation. He closed the email without replying. As the weeks rolled on, there was less and less to say. In his head, he knew he was doing the right thing, that he was standing up for the faceless masses who didn't trust their governments, their police, their military. He was preserving a cultural touchstone that would not come again in his lifetime, in his children's lifetime, perhaps in all the human lifetimes to follow. What he was doing was important. In his head, he knew that, but in his heart, he was just a man who desperately missed his family. And if he left this place to see them, he would never be allowed to return. George rubbed at his face. It was time to check on the children. He left his room. The guard turned sharply on one heel, knowing where George was going and leading the way without being told. George followed, amazed, as he always was, that this had all begun with one simple phone call. George finished his call, or rather, the call finished for him when the signal dropped. The bars vanished and didn't return. He was pretty sure he'd given good directions before he'd been cut off, though. If so, he would find out soon enough. Through the hull's cracks, the wind eased from a howl to a groan. The storm died down like all storms do. He heard Toivo arguing with Bernie. George couldn't make out the words. Toivo sounded pissed. Maybe he was campaigning for the others to join him, to murder the children. Exactly how far was George willing to go to stop that from happening? I don't know what to do, he said. The children didn't answer. You guys are a big help. The words turned to white as they left his mouth. Temperature dropping. Winter's fist was slowly squeezing tight around the wreck, snatching away what heat remained. The children, they were shivering. From the cold? Maybe. Or maybe from fear. George terrified them. Which was fine because they terrified him. George stared at the children. The children stared at George. A human shape that could never be mistaken as actually human. 2 arms and 2 legs, but they were so thin, like tree branches come to life with fluid motion. Black eyes, 3, not 2, set in heads too big for the death camp skinny bodies. And those mouths. George did all he could to not look at those mouths. An hour passed. A banging on the door. The sound reverberated through the room, bounced off the 12 crash chambers or shock seats or whatever the capsules were that had kept these children alive while their parents had been turned to paste. The children flinched at the sound, huddled together, made noises that sounded frightened and pathetic. George unslung his rifle. He held it nervously in both hands. He thought of slinging it again. Was he going to threaten his lifelong friends or something? The pounding came again. George decided to hold on to the weapon. He pushed the door open. There stood Toivo and Jocko. Toivo, who had already executed one of the children, and Jocko, little Jocko, who had shown more bravery than George and the others combined. "Give me your phone," Toivo said. George didn't move. Jocko stared past George at the children. The man seemed oddly calm in light of the situation. George wondered if Jocko wanted to kill them just as Toivo did. "The phone," Toivo said, holding out a hand palm up. "Bernie's phone ain't got shit for signal. Mr. Eckler isn't doing great. We need to try and help him, eh?" George nodded absently. "Yeah, I already called someone." That caught Jocko's attention. "Oh, ambulance," George said. "That's part of the deal." "What deal?" Toivo said. George was suddenly unsure if he'd given enough info before the call cut off. Did they know where to go? "I had a signal, but it's gone," George said. "I made a call. Help is coming." Toivo's eyes hardened. "For the last time, Georgie, give me your phone." Any pretense of friendship had evaporated. 3 decades they had known each other, come here every year to reconnect, shared all the experiences life had to offer. And all of that was gone. If George had raised his rifle as Toivo had, if, together, they had slaughtered these helpless beings, that friendship would have been strengthened beyond any measure. But George had chosen otherwise. He pulled the phone out of his pocket and he handed it over. Jocko and Toivo huddled over it as if it had a secret warmth that might chase away the encroaching winter. "No bars," Toivo said. He looked at Jocko. "And it's almost out of power, eh? What are we going to do? How do we get Mr. Eckler to the hospital?" Jocko stared at the phone for a moment, perhaps hoping for a connection to suddenly appear. He shrugged. "I don't know, eh? Maybe we can see if the snowmobile made it through that explosion." The 3 men and the 11 alien children fell silent. In that void, the sound of the wind, dying even further from a moan to a whisper. And through that whisper, another noise. The faint, growing whine of a distant siren. Jocko and Toivo looked at George. "You called an ambulance?" Toivo said. George nodded. Jocko shook his head. "There's a fucking alien invasion, and you got an ambulance to come out to the middle of nowhere? How? And the roads are snowed shut. How did you pull this off, Georgie?" George shouldered his rifle. He felt nervous without it in his hands, naked, as if his friends might suddenly aim and fire, taking more innocent lives. He glanced at his friends' weapons, at his friends, until they got the hint. The attitude of both men had changed. Somehow, George had got help for the man who had raised them all. They both slung their rifles. "Let's get outside," George said. "It'll take us at least 30 minutes to hike back to the cabin. We need to be there when they come, or they might drive on by." George would later learn that the alien attack had failed within the first George would later learn that the alien attack had failed within the first 48 hours. The aliens had been unsure of where to strike, or so the talking heads said. The ships had appeared out of nowhere over the skies of the biggest cities in the most advanced nations: Beijing, New York, London, Paris, Moscow, Mumbai, Berlin, and more. Trouble was, the most advanced nations also had the most advanced militaries. Air-to-air missiles blew flying saucers out of the sky, turned them into flaming wrecks that plummeted into the cities below. Some U.S. pilots said it was like shooting down a space shuttle, a target that couldn't dodge, that exploded easily and spectacularly. Others used more colloquial terms. They said it was like shooting flaming arrows at hydrogen-filled fish swimming in a barrel of jet fuel. Maybe the plan had been to take out the strongest cities first in the hopes that the weakest would surrender. Whatever the reason, the aliens targeted major cities Whatever the reason, the aliens had targeted major cities first to kill as many people as they could in hopes of crippling humanity's ability to respond. Turned out that the great military minds of the attacking aliens weren't all that great. Some guessed they might not even be military minds at all. Sociologists theorized that the invasion was more religious than military in nature, that it was more covered wagons of armed civilians crossing the Great Plains than it was the landing craft of D-Day. One thing seemed certain. The ships that attacked were not built for battle. Despite a huge loss of human life and an incalculable damage to property, the invasion was put down so quickly it left many questions unanswered. Now it was assumed that the aliens... The most popular theory was that the aliens knew they didn't have the numbers or the hardware to win, but attacked anyway, believing that their god or gods would lead them to victory. They were wrong. New theories pitched a more logical concept. The aliens had gone to war with what they had because they had no place else to go. The children were proof that the aliens could breathe just fine on Earth. After some trial and error, they were able to safely eat many kinds of food. The aliens, so the theory went, had to abandon their own planet, and Earth was the only place they could reach. They could have tried to communicate, but instead, they declared war, and they paid dearly. The conflict had been so fast, so decisive, that the only alien ship left intact was the one that hadn't fought at all. The nations that came out the strongest were the strongest to begin with, nations with large militaries and high-tech weaponry. America, Russia, China, Western Europe, South Korea, and Japan had been hit hard, but it also struck back almost immediately. South America hadn't fared as well. The Middle East had been devastated. AK-47s were great for killing civilians and poorly trained militias, but they didn't do much against spaceships. All in all, there was far more speculation than fact. Only one alien ship had come down somewhat intact, the one that crashed not far from George's hunting cabin. Some assumed it was destined for Chicago before the malfunction brought it down. Every other vessel had blown up rather impressively when hit by air-to-air missiles, and had all been engulfed and flamed, then hit the ground like a bomb. End result, little material remained intact. Very little material, and no survivors, save for George's 11 charges. Through the thrice-daily interviews, George had learned that there were no known alien survivors except for the children. That made them beyond important, an immeasurable resource. If there were other survivors, they were locked up tight in some secret government location. People speculated that that was the truth. And George was one of those people. The invasion changed the world, but not in the way sci-fi authors or great intellectuals might have predicted. Governments didn't come together. If anything, they were more divided than ever. What changed was the people. The people came together, ignoring racial and cultural divides. They came together with one common interest: absolute distrust of authority. Among the countless conspiracy theories was the top dog of them all. The governments knew what had been coming and hadn't warned the people. Theories like that weren't new. They had been part of the populace since governments had formed. What was new was a technology that no government could completely control: the internet, cell phones, local networks. People organizing, encrypting, working together as one against anything that smacked of authority. In the years before the invasion, people had come to fear their governments. Now, the governments feared the people. And with good reason. George, Toivo, and Jocko stood by the ruins of a hunting cabin that had been the centerpiece of their friendship for 3 decades. The centerpiece of Mr. Ekela's relationship with his own childhood friends for the 2 decades before that. Over half a century of tradition, now nothing more than shattered timber and scattered camping supplies. The wind's ebb hadn't lasted long. Whitened treetops swayed slightly. The woods were here before people. The woods would be here after people were gone. The woods just didn't give a shit about any of this. Those trees bracketed a long stretch of white. The road, thick with snowdrifts 3 feet high, The road, thick with snowdrifts 3 feet high, still, motionless waves in a snapshot of a frozen ocean. And coming down that road, a moving spray of snow rising up in grand arcs, crashing to the sides in puffing clouds of white that caught the morning sun. Through those clouds, a pulsing orange light. "Ambulance lights are red, eh?" Toivo said. "Not an ambulance," Jocko said. "It's a goddamn snowplow. Let me guess, Georgie. Ambulance right behind it?" George nodded. "I hope so." The flashing orange light came closer. As it did, the 3 men could make out the cabin of the snowplow itself, highway maintenance orange seeming to surf on a flowing, crashing wave of snow. Toivo turned to George. "How'd you get a snowplow to come out here, eh?" Jocko laughed, the first time that sound had been heard since the alien ship had torn open the night sky with a boom so loud it shook the ground. "'Cause it ain't just a snowplow and the ambulance," he said. George had not called the police. He hadn't called the military. Not that he would even know how to call the military or if such a thing was possible. And he hadn't called an ambulance. Not directly, anyway. George had called Channel 10. The attack had hit major cities. As far as George knew, Houghton and Hancock, the closest cities of any size at all, hadn't been hit. Those hospitals would not be flooded. The ambulances would not be swamped. He hoped that if he acted fast, he could put someone to work getting the resources needed to help Mr. Ekela. Not knowing how long his connection would last, George had talked fast, not caring who answered the phone, hoping that whoever it was could remember all the info. He'd been so nervous, he'd been shaking. He had known, somehow, that he was committing himself to something big, something long-term. The words had rushed out of him. He'd heard his own voice as if there were 2 of him, one speaking on the phone, the other listening to every syllable. "I don't have long, so take notes. My name is George Pelton. I grew up around here. An alien ship crashed near my deer camp. It came down during the storm. No one saw it, but you don't have much time before the major networks and the military come. I can show you the ship. I have alien survivors. I can put them on camera. If you want this story, you need to get here as fast as you can. The roads are snowed in. Find a way to get here. You have to bring an ambulance. And no police. If there isn't an ambulance, I won't show you. If there are police, I won't show you. 1 reporter, 1 cameraman. I'm giving you 3 hours to get an ambulance here, or I'm calling Fox News." George had given the cabin's address, and then the signal had dropped. Even if he'd had a full cellular connection, How many calls would he have had to make to try and get an ambulance and a snowplow out here? Would anyone have listened to him? Maybe, maybe not. But a reporter, a motivated reporter, would do anything in his or her power to make it happen. That had been George's guess, and from the way things turned out, he had guessed right. In the other room, paramedics worked on Mr. Eckler. George was still in the room with the children, but had caught a few snippets of their conversation, enough to know that Mr. Eckler would be all right. George's friends clustered around the old man and the paramedics. Other than a smile from Bernie, knowing nods from Toivo and Jocko, the three friends' way of saying thanks to George, they didn't give a damn about the reporter, the cameraman, or the alien children. George stood in front of the children, who clustered together, cowering. Maybe they didn't know the difference between a rifle and a camera. How could they? The last time a human had pointed something at them, one of their friends had died. Surprisingly, George recognized the reporter, a woman named Nancy Oostergaard. Even though he didn't live up here anymore, he'd seen her faces on billboards in the area. That was because she wasn't a reporter at all, she was the nightly news anchor. Maybe the anchor of a small town station didn't have a lot of pull on the national scene, but she had enough to be the one that drove out on the freshly plowed road to do this shoot. "Mr. Pelton, are you ready?" Nancy asked. George nodded. Nancy stood by him, her left shoulder almost touching his right, a microphone in her hand. The cameraman resettled the camera on his shoulder, then switched on the lights mounted atop the rig. The small room lit up. The children squealed in fear and clutched at each other even tighter. 4, 3, 2, the cameraman said. Nancy took a slow, deep breath through her nose, let it out even slower through her mouth. And then she spoke in that inflection so common among reporters. "This is Nancy Oostergaard reporting live near Eagle Harbor. We are inside a crashed UFO, the same kind that has laid waste to cities all across the planet. This ship has actual alien survivors, the first we've heard of through the sporadic reports coming from across the planet. As far as we know, all other ships were destroyed by military counterattacks, which may make this solitary vessel the only one of its kind that remains intact. But far more important than that, this ship contains actual alien survivors, the only survivors we've heard of." George watched the cameraman step to the side, trying to get a shot of the children. The children saw this. As a huddled, mewling pack, they moved to keep George between them and the camera. "Yes, these are actual aliens," Nancy said. The camera swung back sharply, locked on Nancy and George. "They were discovered by this man, George Pelton. He was here on a hunting trip with his friends. Mr. Pelton, could you describe what you saw the night the ship crashed?" The camera's small light burned brightly, nearly blinding George. How did reporters stare into this light night after night? Was he on local TV? Or was this signal carried across America? Across the world? He shouldn't be doing this. He should be in the other room with his friends, helping Mr. Eckler through the deep woods and to the ambulance waiting by the cabin. "Mr. Pelton," Nancy said, "this is a live signal. I'm told we're being watched all over the globe. Can you describe what you saw?" George took one look behind him, at the children. Cowering, terrified. He looked at the walls, at the crashed seats the children's parents had used to keep their beloved little ones alive. And in that moment, something deep inside of George awakened. Awakened and took over. He looked dead into the camera. "These kids haven't done anything to anyone," he said. "They're helpless. They're innocent. Everyone watching this, we can't let the government get them, cut them up, study them. What if they were your kids? Would you want your babies butchered?" The cameraman moved again, tried to get an angle. The children were too many to fully hide behind George, but they tried anyway. George took one step toward the camera, leaned toward the lens. "They're just kids," he said. "I'll stay with them, try to keep them safe, report to the world however I can, till we know they won't be killed for some experiment. I'll stay with them. The government lies. I don't. The cameraman, surprised, took a half step back, swung the camera up again until the lens was only a few feet from George. George pointed at his own face. Look at me. Remember me. I was here before the government got him. Anyone else they send, well, you don't know what they'll tell you. I will stay with these children. I'll report to you however I can. You know the government lies, and it's not just the American government. They all lie. Not this time. Not this time. These are just kids. I'll stay with them as long as it takes. When you stop seeing this face, that's when these helpless, innocent kids are as good as dead. Remember me. I was here first. We need to keep these kids alive, whatever it takes. George reached out, grabbed the camera, held it, and leaned in close. They lie, whatever it takes. If he had only known the way the world would interpret his words. If he had, would he have said them? Mr. Pelton, you ready to go in? George stared at the airlock door, at the guard standing next to it. Behind that door lay the ruined ship. In a matter of days, the Army had built a huge pole barn around the wrecked vessel. Within a week, they had built a second building inside the first one that covered the alien vessel like a shell. That was where George was headed now. The dead bodies had been removed, the debris cleared away, and the wreck had been scanned for radiation, poisons, gases, anything that might harm a physiology humans knew very little about. Nothing dangerous had been discovered. Not knowing what might hurt the aliens, the government scientists had decided to leave them all in their own ship. Mr. Pelton? Yes, George said automatically. Thank you, I'm ready. Thank you. Ever the Midwestern boy. The guard nodded. He would not be coming in with George. Another guard would be waiting inside, this one in a hazmat suit. Everyone entering the wreck wore one. Everyone except George. The children had been exposed to him after all, and he had been exposed to them. George knew that if he left to see his own children, he wouldn't be allowed back in because of potential pathogens he might bring with. New bacteria, new contaminants. The government would have a reason to cut him out of the picture, to tell the world that he was now a potential danger to the children instead of their protector. If not that reason, they would find another. If he left this place, it was over. That was one of the reasons George couldn't leave to visit his own children. If he did, who knew what bacteria he might bring back with him? He could leave anytime he wanted, he just couldn't come back. George often wondered why he said the things he'd said when that camera light flicked on. He had never been political. He had never believed in any conspiracy theories. At least, not before this started. He'd never been involved in local government. He hadn't even watched the news. Yet that diatribe had flown out of him almost as if he'd written it in advance. It had made him a global sensation. The brave, selfless protector of alien children. It also made him very much alone. The airlock door opened. As expected, inside waited the hazmat-suited guard. George knew the children would be happy to see him. They would cling to him, as they always did, ask him questions in a language that he didn't understand. The few words he had learned weren't enough to convey thoughts of any complexity. But he didn't need to be fluent to understand that he just didn't understand. He knew what they wanted, though. They wanted to know when they could go home. The trouble was, they were home, and they were never, ever going to leave. And if George stayed true to his word, neither would he. He stepped forward. The airlock door closed behind him. That was the 7th day of Deer Camp, which closes up the trilogy, the 5th day of Deer Camp, the 6th day of Deer Camp, and the 7th day of Deer Camp. I hope you enjoyed the story. All right, let's rock and roll. That took forever. I was trying to decide whether I should split that into 2 or not. I thought I'd get it done a little bit faster. But you know what, ladies and gentlemen, I'm so sorry to say this, but when you are an actor of my caliber, you just can't rush these things. Speaking of actors, baby girl, why don't you come up here and hang out with me, my fellow actor, ladies and gentlemen, Miss A. Sigler. Hold on. I can't see. I have sunglasses on.
Oh my. Okay. I also just spilled some of your actorly drink down my shirt.
Okay.
Trying to bring it up.
Hello. Hey, I was told this is a family show, but now we got champagne showers, bitches, because I'm an A-level actor. All right, ladies and gentlemen, now that I have my acting garb back on, do you have your chair, baby?
I'm getting it.
Okay. Thanks, hon.
Sure.
What we are going to do now, ladies and gentlemen, is rush through the rest of the show. It's very fun. We're going to play you a sample of my multicast acting debut. Yes, it is sensational, spectacular, splendiferous, and
Did you say sensationals?
Sensationals, allegedly. And pretty damn fancy, ladies and gents. Pretty damn fancy. Okay, you know what? I can't see the fucking screen.
I also can't. I don't feel so fancy. Give me a second.
Let's go to chat. Yes, I saw some people asking about the chat. If you are on the Twitch and you're on Twitch, you can only see that Twitch chat unless you I go to this screen. And then you see everybody else's chat. Rob Otto wants to know, how did I come up with such original names for the trilogy? It's based on a song by the Yoopers, and it's called The Second Week of Deer Camp. And if you guys have never listened to The Second Week of Deer Camp, you're only cheating the alien children, ladies and gentlemen. You're only cheating the... Oh, look at that. There we go. Look at fancy. What do you got going on? Are you an actor?
I mean, you're very fancy, so I had to do something, and this is all that's in my bedroom. I don't... Two things.
Wait a minute. Let's go back. Let's go to your camera. I gotta get your camera squared away. Okay, yeah. Okay, that's all right. That's all right, though. Whoop, we'll go here. There we
I'm
go.
not sure if this is on or not.
Yeah, it should. Yep. Here you go. Boom. Get your headphones on.
Hi, you guys.
Go ahead, talk, babe.
Hi, you guys.
You're good. You don't have to put your headphones on. I think we can wing it.
I think I'm gonna do this.
And I'll do this too. That's right. This is how fancy people. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, now.
Wow, this hurts. Nope, I'm not doing this.
All right, here we go. Getting at it now. I did tell you we're gonna listen to my my multicast
Ouch.
audio drama debut. And you know it's hot in here.
It is so hot in here.
How do fancy actors deal with all of this clothing? It's a bunch of bullshit.
Well, so here's the thing. So here's a weird thing.
'Kay.
Scott has, as you guys know, have read so many books that you can buy on Audible. Wait. Cheers. Congratulations, baby.
Thank you, baby.
Pinky out.
It's how we fancy people do.
He's recorded more books in a real studio than I have, but both of us have recorded Sigler books in a fancy studio. And in the fancy studio, in recorded books in Pasadena, oh my God, I was so sweaty the whole time because air conditioning makes noise. So it's not, even if you get super pro, when you were with the kitten in Detroit, was there air conditioning?
I didn't know you'd found out about that. Oh, you mean the actual real kitten?
The little kitten.
Okay.
You guys remember,
oops,
right?
gotta get that up.
He had his little kitten on his
honey,
chest.
that was 15 years ago. I don't know if people remember that.
I think it was 2011,
all of
actually.
the actual recording, all the audiobook recording facilities have air conditioning because they're big buildings that cool the whole building down. Then you don't have fans or AC blowing inside of your own booth. So there you
right,
go.
but you can't have air conditioning blowing inside of your own booth. So when you're actually
Shit, sorry. Got it, go ahead.
when you're actually in that Foley booth, in that recording booth, it gets hot. It gets hot. It doesn't get this hot because the room is bigger, and it certainly doesn't get as hot as the Tech TARDIS.
I thought you were talking about how hot I looked in my acting gear.
But very hot.
Little sweat dripping down my chest. Down my chest.
So it definitely
Chris Grawl
our
knows home
4x4,
studios get hot.
Yeah, Chris Grawl absolutely knows. If you have a home sound booth, it's essentially 3 feet square, 4 feet square, 5 feet square if you're lucky. And it's terribly insulated, so it gets terribly hot no matter what you do. But that's also true when you go to large scale recording places. So
Dan Baker's trying to spoil. I don't think I've told you that story yet, Dan. The Florida story, that particular one. So
was this from
thank
the
you,
recent
thank you,
story?
Daniel.
I love it. Here, look, I'm
Thank
gonna have
you,
some
Daniel.
color. I'm just gonna do this.
All right. Here we go. Steve Rickenberg. The temperature in my home studio is too damn high. All right, let's go to me now. I promised a debut. Babe, can you turn up? Is it me? No, that's just. Is that the screen that's dark? I think we're good. Get the volume. Let's get to it, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, we're going to books. We only have a little bit of time left. So, would like to point out that the reviews for the Crypt Shakedown, which came out October 3rd, we're not even a full month in, 254. Let's go ahead and run to see if we actually. Race, shut your goddamn. It's gone up 3 more. Shut your goddamn mouth.
Race.
Swear to God, I'll turn you into soup. And then, as usual, when you finish it, please go leave a review. Oh my God, his best to date. There are some mean-ass ones in here too. Not for me, 1 stars across the board. See, ladies and gentlemen, this is why it's super important if you like the book to go leave a review. Could not finish. Too many characters to keep track of. They all sound the same, seem to have similar names. Don't click helpful on that one. There's been a couple really good ones.
I love the Easter egg comments. They're super fun.
Yeah, a lot of people are loving this book. But the thing is, the mathematics of someone who comes in and just takes a big poop on the book is it drags the aggregate down so much. So, go leave a review. We're up to 257. We are now 1/4 of the way to the goal, which is 1,000. We want 1,000 reviews on Audible of this book.
And it is so difficult for me to express how useful you leaving a review and you saying this was helpful for good reviews is to our entire existence, because Audible is Amazon. And if Amazon sees that you have what the industry calls like 1,000 true fans or 1,500 or whatever true fans, that is important, and that helps catapult a little bit sometimes. It helps get more deals of the day. It helps get more 2-for-1 sales. It helps all of that stuff. And I cannot overstate how useful and important that is for us to do our jobs as Empty Set Entertainment. I also have to take this off because I literally cannot move my head.
That's all right.
Or it'll fall off.
So there we go with the reviews. We'll talk more about that in the future, of course. We always talk about let's go back to Maine. And we've got to go to books. Ladies and gentlemen, what we're going to play for you now, I will ride the volume to make sure you don't get your ears blown out. But we're going to play the trailer for you. And at some point during this trailer, this is from Graphic Audio, a division of Recorded Books, and they are the people who put out DRUDEN, which was released when, sweetheart?
Yesterday.
Yesterday. All my Halloweens were so far away. Then a World War II story kicked me in my pants. Oh, I like audiobooks on yesterday. All right, here we go. At least I won't sing the syphilis version of that song, which is also very funny.
Hey, my brother's in the chat room now, too.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, here we go. I'm going to play. This is 3 minutes and 46 seconds. We're going to play this, and then A's going to give you a little bit of information. Yeah, babe?
Before you do, I'm putting this back on because my mama said I am celebrating the Day of the Dead. So go ahead.
Day of the Dead, and there's some dead in this book. Ladies and gentlemen, here we go. Unless you have actually bought this book or this 2.5-hour feature-length production and already listened to it, you are the first people in the world to hear my multicast audio drama debut. Let it ride.
Graphic Audio presents DRUDEN by Scott Sigler and Adrian Picardi. November 1944, in the Hürtgen forest of Germany. In the waning months of World War II, a depleted but resilient U.S. platoon is tasked with locating a secret Nazi research facility. With all the enemy soldiers and staff seemingly missing, and more questions than answers, the platoon follows their trusted lieutenant, who in turn is being led by a shady OSS operative. But when night falls, they discover what the project actually created. Rudolph glanced down through the glass to the pit, then back to his wife.
Hell is empty. Once the devils are all here.
He put his goggles back on and took his wife's free left hand. Henrietta flipped the switch. And the lights went out. Nothing past the protective glass but blackness and the terrified breathing of the prisoner. Then, a clicking sound. Harris, any word from the Graves Registration Unit?
Yes, sir. They're busy. The entire battalion got hit pretty hard last night.
Potts looked around and realized Rabinowitz was still in the foxhole.
Rabbi, get your ass over here.
Rabinowitz pretended not to hear and stared straight ahead.
Rabbi, if you don't get up, I'll...
It's okay, Sergeant. Leave him be.
Second platoon is assigned to Captain Weiner until he finds what he's looking for.
Or doesn't find. Herr Alfred might be lying, just to save his own family. We'll know soon enough. The location is only a few hours away.
Mayberry stood, looked to Eric, and canted his head toward the map on the table.
Reconnaissance says the German divisions are here and here. Our 8th and 9th are in pursuit, supporting the advancing 3rd. We're moving out, ASAP.
Without us, sir?
My orders are to help Weiner. You're that help. And besides, after today, you boys earned an easy assignment.
What if there's a camp garrison?
Alfred says he's been there 24 times, never seen guards.
The colonel offered Eric a nod of assurance.
Hang on.
The Germans have pulled out for miles around. They've abandoned towns, bases, everything. Second platoon should be able to handle it. If you see something you can't handle, get out of there.
Eric now saw Harris on his back. Dead eyes, staring out, his face turned partway to Eric, his guts torn out and strewn across the forest floor. Suddenly, Wilson is grabbed by 2 men and goes down. Potts and Eric kick at the men attacking Wilson, knocking them off, then shoot them point blank multiple times. Both men were dressed in civilian clothes. From behind Eric, a man rushes in. Eric turned, but the man closed the distance with freakish speed. The men fell face down to reveal Rabinowitz and Lifter at the edge of the woods.
Come on!
Eric and Potts slung their rifles through their 1911 sidearms, then grabbed Wilson off the ground and carried him out of the woods.
Lifter, let him have it! Forward!
DRUDEN by Scott Sigler
That's me.
and Adrian Picardi.
That's Adrian. There you go, ladies and gentlemen. The world premiere debut reveal thing of me in my full cast acting ability. Now, I played it, I played it a little straight. I was sort of typecast.
Oh, I'm
They
sorry, Captain Colonel.
said, Colonel Jonathan Mayberry.
I'm sorry, one more time.
Colonel Jonathan Mayberry was the
'Cause we
part
love
we
him.
wrote into this. A little Tuckerization for our pal Jonathan Mayberry. Also, when they cast me, baby,
Yeah.
it sounds like my real voice. The thing is, when I auditioned for this part, they said, "Oh my God, you have such a massive ringing tone of pure command and authority. We have to put you as the highest ranked person in this production." Voila! Therefore, and
Voila.
hitherto, I was cast as the highest ranking person in this whole thing. So there you go. Pretty goddamn fun. So let's go take a look at where you can find this. Go to books. There's only one place, of course. We're on the ball here, you guys. ScottSigler.com/Druden. There's right there. There's another sample that sadly does not contain my voice, which is just ridiculous. It makes no sense. And there are links you can go click through on Amazon, which is Audible, and at Audible. And you also, if you're a graphic audio fan, you can get stuff directly at Graphic Audio. The whole synopsis of the feature-length production is here. Also featuring a special cameo appearance by Scott Sigler portraying Lieutenant Colonel John Mayberry, the battalion commanding officer. And there you go. So that is it. This is fun. We've been working on this for a long time, and Graphic Audio did a great job on it. But ScottSigler.com/Druden. Go check it out. Enjoy it. It's about 2.5 hours. Maybe it's worth the credit. It's a little pricey, but
Yeah, I'm glad he said that. I bought it in pre-order, and it is 1 credit, but it's only 2.5 hours. And I understand if that's not your jam. It's normally not my jam either, but also our 30-hour Mount Fitzroy.
yeah, 1 credit.
1 credit.
1 credit.
So for us, which isn't the choice you will make, we're trying to balance out the scales there, right? But Graphic Audio are great partners. They're good. They're they're
people.
essentially a mom
Super fun
and
people.
pop business that got bought by a bigger conglomerate and stayed.
Fuck, they
mom
do so
and
much
pop.
volume too, dude. They just
Right.
crank stuff
and,
out, man. It's
And Graphic
amazing.
Audio is now owned by Recorded Books, who is also great. Recorded Books put out the credit. They're great. We love them. But Recorded Books also purchased Graphic Audio and purchased them and just put them in whole cloth, the whole team, the whole thing, into the graphic audio system, which we love as a small business, right? So the small business got bought by a bigger corporation, and the small business that was working so well together is still working so well together. They just were like, yeah, we want you to, do your thing for now. And it's been lovely because they are great people to work with. They came to us in the beginning. Scott came to them with Druden and said, hey, I have a screenplay. You guys are voice actors. I have a script. And they were like, oh, we've never done this before. Let's look at this. And then they went up the food chain and came back down and said, yes, let's do this. So congratulations to you, my sweet.
Thank you. I had one directorial demand of them. I said, if you're going to make this product, sirs and ma'ams, there's one thing that you must do. The noises made by the antagonists, let us call them the antagonists.
That's good.
That's how I learned it at my second semester at the Sorbonne studying acting.
Sure.
The antagonists.
Do you have that hat?
The noise they make must be reminiscent of howler monkeys. Have you ever heard of a howler monkey howl?
Am I howl?
What? Have you? Wait, I didn't ask if you howl like a howler monkey.
Have you
That's
ever
a family
heard
show.
Of a howler monkey?
That's a goddamn family show.
To be fair, you said, have you ever heard of a howler monkey?
Well, that's what
howl?
you heard. That's what you heard.
I'm right, you guys. He said, have you ever heard of?
Nobody throw the red replay flag, please. That's not what I said, baby. Goddamn.
The replay flag.
Ah, you sons of bitch. That's not a howler monkey, actually. The howler monkeys are insane creatures. So there we go. That is
the
it.
iceberg has adjudicated this.
Is he? God damn it.
And he said I am correct.
Do you not want more work? Jesus Christ. Oh, that's right. You get to decide who works.
He works with it.
Bitches, I just write the books. Baby handles the rest of the business.
I said what I said.
So we were going to talk about, we'd set up time in the show to explain to you why some of the hardcovers were late getting out. However, we just came from Mysterious Galaxy Books in San Diego, and all of the orders at this point in time are signed and are probably in the mail as of tomorrow. They had a staff of 5. When I would sign the book, there were people wrapping the book, putting in all the extra accoutrements they have, packaging them. I think a shit ton are going to go out tomorrow. At the latest, they're going to go out Friday. So all y'all will have your book. Now, if you want to explain the details, baby, you can. But it's fairly a moot point at this point. We're up to 500 signed copies. 500 signed copies, motherfuckers.
Right. And I just want to say that if you ordered your book in this calendar week, today is Wednesday. So if you ordered on Sunday through Halloween and today, those books were not in this signing cache. But I understand it's very few of you, and probably none of you on this cast. He just signed about 180 books today. There are about 13 that we didn't have inventory for, but those were ordered literally this very week. So if you are a person who ordered before Sunday, this past Sunday, you'll get your book shipped out. They are planning to ship everything out by Monday. They, as you know, and if you don't know, go to Sigler Junkies and look. They wrap every package with care and love and everything. And they write personal notes and they wrap the book so it gets protected. It's beautiful. And there are about 20 of you that ordered this week. Those books are not yet in because we have to order them to get them in, but everything else will go out by Monday.
All right, and then let's take a look real quick for those of you who got the hardcover or did the ebook. These reviews do not cross over. We don't know why. A's been working on it literally for years. Even though Amazon and Audible are the same company, and some books correlate the reviews, does not work that way for us. Over on Amazon, we're at 207 ratings. We are averaging a 4.6. Those are rookie numbers. I'm going to need you to pump those numbers up, ladies and gentlemen. Pump those numbers up. So go leave a review at the Crypt. And again, remember, I've said this a couple times, I'll say it again. If you read the book and sort of enjoy it, you're like, I like Scott's other work better. This is okay, but it's not my cup of tea. Don't leave a review. If you can't leave an honest 5-star review, just don't leave one, because the 3 stars and 4 stars, frankly, those bring the aggregate down. So if you read it and it's not your jam, I appreciate you. I'll hit you on the back end with that, but leave that out. And if you read it and it just made your nippies pop out like, bring, bring, then you go leave a 5-star review. And feel free to say, this book made my nippies pop out. Turkey timers on both sides. It's fine.
Also, if you have left a review at Audible where we have almost 2,000 reviews, but not at Amazon where we have about 200 reviews, you can copy and paste because Amazon and Audible are the same company and they compare and contrast and will just assimilate similar things eventually. But they'll do it like, I've already asked them, but they'll still do it like 6 months from now.
Yes, David Lamb
That's just
nipples.
how they work, right?
That's right.
So even if you've already written a review anywhere that's a positive review and you just copy it whole cloth, go to Amazon, click review, and leave that review, that's still helpful. Because a few months from now, Amazon will clean up their reviews and comments and whatever, and they will assimilate, and that will be fine. But right now, it helps us still do this and bring you more stuff. And that
You know
would
what
be great.
is interesting is people really seem to enjoy my turkey timer analogy.
Well, and they
Turkey
also,
timers left and right. Let's go. Ba-bing, ba-doo, that turkey's done. Woo!
I feel like you guys like my prim soul having to interact with his goblin soul.
Goblin soul. I think the Gray Goblin's in the house right now.
Oh,
I know
he is.
Danny's still there or not, but
It's my favorite. The
Yeah.
Gray Goblin
the
is
Gray
my
Goblin
favorite.
is Dr. Daniel Baker, PhD, had a night hanging out with us where he was very much not the intelligent, highly intelligent person that he is.
He also took a late night flight
He was.
and arrived at 11:30 and stayed
I'm sorry,
up.
I gotta say this. My boy had the intelligence of a donkey nutsack and looked he looked similar to a donkey nutsack, and just flashing gang. He was flashing gang.
Sadly, was still smarter than the both of us the whole time.
It's so great, dude. It was so great. When you have friends that are smarter than you, those few moments where they get drunk and are stupid, you relish those. You relish those and you hold them close to your heart. Very, very close to your heart.
And apparently for us, we put your pal on blast. Which we shouldn't have done.
We'll have to see if we can get permission to show the Gray Goblin photo in the future. We have permission?
I can't do both of these. No, we don't have
We
permission.
don't have permission. Dr. Daniel Baker, PhD, my colleague A and I are working on a research paper that will benefit science. It's a very serious scientific paper about the human condition, which I know a lot about because I have a PhD in acting now.
No.
So yes.
Listen, my dear Abby, who just asked, why haven't I heard these stories? I will
For the
tell
same
you them.
reason she hasn't heard about the Octensocian in a brown paper bag. That's why.
I will
you don't
share
need to know, Abs.
everything I know about those.
You don't need to know.
A month from now-ish when we're hanging out. But in the last pre-pandemic boys hangout, which all of you who don't know what this is will just enjoy this. You actually know. Scott, before the pandemic, Scott and his lifelong friends got together once a year and had a boys' trip. And it's vaguely about 10 of them.
Oh, it's not the Gray Goblin. It's the Grim Goblin. That's where we're screwing up. Because I'm sorry, A and I had also had a couple soda pops that night, too. The Grim Goblin. That is the story we were telling.
Yeah. But our dear friend Dan came out on a late night flight to San Diego from the Midwest. So, of course, he moves into younger territory and, of course, shows up and we have food and drinks and like a craft cocktail tour because he's an exquisite craft cocktailer. And then he was like, dude, I'm jet lagged and I worked today and I'm exhausted. And we're like, cool, 3 more bars. And then we had to come home because we had to have food and we had somebody else coming and showing up. Robbie was showing up. Rob Otto was showing up later. And maybe we'll show you the Grim Goblin, but I don't think so.
Neo just said prim and chaos. That's what should have gone on our wedding invitations.
Wait
prim,
a minute. Who said
Prim and Neo did.
Prim and chaos
Prim and chaos.
is exactly who we are.
All right, ladies and gentlemen.
I'm prim, by the way.
No, God,
I'm
are you kidding me?
vastly prim,
oh
by
my
the way.
gosh. Oh my gosh. Listen, I go to church every Sunday and then on Tuesday
Where's
afternoons.
the nearest?
just to
Where's
make
the
sure.
nearest religious
It's over there.
facility?
It's over there on Evergreen Street. It's close to here. It's at the corner of Evergreen and Pine. It's a very tree-centric church. There's a lot of discussion about oxygenization and processing carbon and a bunch of other stuff. It's quite great. It's quite great. Listen, we love all of you people. You're not as good an actor as I am, frankly. It's me and Russell Crowe, and we know it. It's all right. You may act. You may act all you want, but me and Russell Crowe are going to go act and then go get into a fight for no reason. That's what we do. It's what actors do. So there you go.
Hey, Robbie, if you're in the room, I'm going to choose Robert De Niro tonight for that.
For what?
I can't tell. I'll tell you after. I'm saying to
motherfuckers.
Robbie, because Robbie and I shared a crazy-ass text
You
today.
motherfuckers. Are you... I tell you what, me and Russell Crowe are going to jump up on you and bust you down. All right, here we go. Let's go. We're out of here, baby. Ready?
I'm not. Look at this. Like, I can't see these little reds. Oh, it's on that side.
Yeah, our lighting is crazy.
It's crazy.
It's
What's going on?
You know...
Turn towards me.
Turn the beat
And
around.
turn the other way.
Yeah,
whatever this red
fucking
spot
nuts.
you see, I can't see.
The sound
physically.
was shot tonight, which I changed. That's on me. That's on me. The lighting is exactly the same as it was last week, but shit looks crazy. Can't figure it out. But you know, that's actually no. This is what we do is we're from the Dadaist school of lighting, and we try to go as minimalist as possible. Is what we do. This is all intentional. Andy Warhol was my personal lighting instructor.
Oh,
so you all may kiss my melting over a tree. Yes, wait, that's not Andy Warhol,
that's
is it?
Salvador Dali.
Salvador Dali. Salvador Dali did home ec where I went to school, so there's obviously a little influence there. All right, guys, my fancy acting ass, and because I'm a fancy actor ass, trophy wife. We're getting out of here. Where do you think we're gonna? We're gonna go to the Academy Awards. We're gonna find a red carpet somewhere at the corner of Evergreen and Pine. Is where we're gonna go.
I hope we're gonna game after this.
It's Fortnite
It's
tonight,
Fortnite tonight, bitches.
I had too many drinks to get any writing done after the show, so it's Fortnite tonight. We're gonna kill some motherfuckers. Is what we're gonna do. All right. Anything else, baby? Let's see. We got next week.
Oh, we do.
I believe we have an interview coming up with Chris Derrick, who is a screenwriter for both The Equalizer and for Picard. He's a big deal. He's a nice guy. And he and a man named Alex Litvak are trying to get Alive made they're trying to sell Alive as a TV show. And he has a podcast called Comics Will Rot Your Brain. Hasn't launched yet, only the trailer's out, but next week when he comes on, there'll be 2 episodes out. He's a delightful human being. We're going to have him on to talk about his podcast, talk about comic books. Now, comic books have influenced his entire world. There probably won't be a read next week. We'll do about 15 minutes of us jibber-jabbing. Then we'll bring on Mr. Derek, and we will have a lovely conversation. He's an awesome dude. You guys are going to love this conversation, and if you ever even opened up a comic book or watched Picard or any Star Trek, or The Equalizer, you're going to want to tune in and watch him. So there we go. That's it. What is the date on that, Peanut?
November 8th.
November 8th. There we go. November 8th. And until then, you know what?
I finally showed off my
What is that?
Jameson whiskey.
Is that Jameson whiskey bottle?
Yeah, you bought it for me.
I'm not grabbing your boobs. I'm actually looking at this.
Yeah, it's a heart-shaped pendant made from a Jameson
sick.
whiskey bottle.
Did I get
have
you that?
Earrings. You did.
Oh,
I
man.
have earrings that my dear friend,
I'm good with the presents, bitches.
my dear friend Amy gave me. You will know Amy as the goddamn
dog sitter. Yep.
But she gave me these glorious earrings that were repurposed glass from bottles, and Scott saw those and thought I needed a repurposed Jameson bottle heart-shaped pendant to go with it.
Did I buy the present, or was I just acting?
I mean, I
difficult
thought
to
you were
say.
buying, but either way, I'm fine with it.
It's, when your talent is at this level, hon, it's you can't separate reality from fiction. It's all over the place because I'm a method actor. I act in a method. All right, you all smell an awful lot like flowers. We think you're fantastic.
Mama, you sleep well too. Jude, she's not blaspheming, and you sleep well too.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we'll be back next week. Until then, you know what you can all do.
Well, we want you to stay safe.
We want you to stay science.
We want you to stay informed.
And for the love of science, we want you to stay informed. Did I fuck that up?
Well, and then
Stay
we
safe.
want you to. I was doing that because you had jumped to kissing off into.
Oh, and we want you all to go kiss off into the sky. I'm Casey Kasem, and this one's going out to Daniel Baker in Tennessee, who wants me to play Don't It Make My Brown Eyes Blue. Well, Daniel, we're going to go ahead and play that for you right now. And hopefully you and the Grim Goblin will have a wonderful evening together. Good night.
Jen, I hope you bring your blasphemer to the superb owl.
Mwah!